At Newark Airport to welcome his new fiancée, Mafia boss Damian Cole froze when he saw the woman he had erased from his life standing in the departures line 7 months pregnant, bruised and terrified. He had come to secure the future of his empire. She was trying to escape a nightmare he had unknowingly helped create. Rain pressed against the terminal windows. Boarding announcements echoed overhead. Nora Bennett held one battered bag and kept looking over her shoulder as if danger could step out of any crowd. Damian had spent 8 months convincing himself that losing her was the price of power. One look at the marks around her throat told him the truth. This is not only a story about revenge, it is about betrayal, guilt, survival, and whether a man can earn back what fear made him destroy. Stay until the end. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. Before Damian saw Nora beneath the airport lights, the day had begun exactly the way he preferred. Quiet, controlled, predictable. At 6 that morning, rain moved across the windows of his Jersey City penthouse in thin silver lines. The Hudson River below looked like dark metal, disturbed only by the slow passage of barges heading toward the harbor. Manhattan stood on the opposite shore, its towers half hidden inside low clouds. Damian Cole stood barefoot in the kitchen wearing black trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. A cup of coffee rested untouched near his hand. The apartment was silent enough for him to hear the clock above the oven. Nothing in the room had been placed by accident. The stone counters were empty. The knives sat in a perfect row. The chairs faced the windows at equal angles. There were no photographs on the walls, no books left open, no coat hanging carelessly over the back of a chair. No evidence that anyone had ever been invited to stay. The housekeeper had placed 2 coffee cups on the island. Damian stared at the second cup. For one brief second, he saw Nora sitting where it rested. She had worn one of his shirts that morning, the sleeves covering her hands. Her hair had been loose around her shoulders. She had held the mug close to her face and watched the river as if she had forgotten there was a city behind it. "You never keep sugar," she had said. "I do not use it. Other people exist, Damian. Not this early." She had smiled into the coffee. That smile had stayed in the apartment long after she left. Damian reached for the second cup, turned it upside down, and pushed it toward the edge of the counter. The memory vanished, or at least it stopped moving. His phone vibrated beside the coffee. Ethan Shaw had arrived downstairs. Damian buttoned his cuffs, slipped on his jacket, and returned to being the man everyone expected. Ethan entered the penthouse carrying a leather document case and the expression of someone who had already solved the day before anyone else had begun it. He was tall, lean, and polished with dark blonde hair cut close at the sides. He wore a navy suit and a pale gray tie. 7 years beside Damian had taught him how to enter a room without appearing cautious, and how to speak without sounding eager. Frank Russo approved the final changes, Ethan said. He placed the document case on the kitchen island and opened it. Inside were contracts, security schedules, guest lists, and a seating chart for Thursday night. Damian looked through the pages without touching them. "The Chicago trucks begin moving next month," Ethan continued. "Medical shipments enter through Ohio and Pennsylvania, then split at the New Jersey warehouses. We handle the ports. They handle inland distribution. And the marriage?" Ethan's mouth curved slightly. "Still included." Damian closed the case. The proposed marriage to Vivian Russo was not romantic. No one involved had ever pretended otherwise. Frank Russo controlled one of the largest transportation networks between Chicago and the East Coast. His daughter controlled much of the family's legitimate business. She was educated, disciplined, and as interested in love as Damian was in poetry. They had met 3 times. The first meeting took place in a private dining room above a restaurant in Manhattan. Vivian arrived 20 minutes late, sat across from Damian, and read the proposed agreement before ordering food. When the waiter asked whether they were celebrating something, Vivian looked at Damian. Asset consolidation, she had said. Damian had respected her immediately. Their second meeting was about security. Their third was about public appearances. There had been no kiss, no confession, no promise that either of them would become someone different after the wedding. That was the appeal. Nothing unexpected could grow inside an arrangement built entirely on terms. Ethan removed a single page from the case. Vivian lands at 11:40. Her father has 2 men traveling with her. The engagement dinner remains scheduled for Thursday at the Mercer Hotel. 40 guests. No press. Security Marcus will inspect the hotel tomorrow. The catering company is cleared. The private elevators will remain locked during dinner. Damian looked at the seating chart. His name appeared beside Vivian's at the center table. Around them sat men who had killed for territory, money, and reputation. On Thursday, they would drink expensive wine beneath crystal lights and pretend a wedding had made them civilized. Ethan watched him. "You have been quiet about this. There is nothing to discuss. Most men have an opinion about their own marriage. Most men marry for reasons that require one." Ethan nodded, but his eyes moved toward the overturned coffee cup. Damian saw the glance. He said nothing. Ethan closed the case. "Once the agreement is signed, no one along the eastern ports will be able to move against us. That is the purpose, and you are certain there is nothing left unresolved." Damian lifted his eyes. "Say what you mean." Ethan rested both hands on the leather case. "Nora Bennett." The name changed the air. Damian's expression did not. "She no longer works for us." "That was not my question. It was not a question at all." Ethan studied him for another moment, then gave a small nod. "No, it was not." 8 months earlier, Nora Bennett had occupied an office 3 doors from Damian's. She was not the sort of woman people noticed immediately. She did not enter rooms loudly. She did not wear expensive jewelry or speak simply to prove that she had a voice. She dressed in dark skirts, plain blouses, and shoes chosen for walking through warehouses rather than impressing the men inside them. But once she began speaking, people listened. Numbers changed shape in her hands. She could look at 6 months of shipping reports and find a missing container before anyone else had noticed the gap. She could trace a false invoice through 5 companies and 3 countries while drinking cold coffee from a paper cup. She remembered account numbers, license plates, birthdays, and lies. The first time Damian truly noticed her, she was standing in his office at 1 a.m. with a red folder pressed against her chest. "You lost $600,000 between Newark and Baltimore," she said. Damian looked up from his desk. "I do not lose money. You did on paper." She placed the folder in front of him and opened it. A chain of freight payments ran across the page. 3 invoices had been duplicated. 2 had been altered. 1 warehouse supervisor had created a company in his brother's name and had been paying himself for shipments that never existed. Damian read the first page, then the second, then the third. "How long did this take you?" "4 hours. My finance team reviewed these accounts last week." "I know, and they found nothing." "I know that too." Damian leaned back. Nora remained standing. Most employees grew nervous when he was silent. They filled the space with apologies, explanations, or unnecessary words. Nora waited. "You are not afraid of me," Damian said. She looked at him directly. "I am afraid of making a mistake in front of you. That is not the same thing." He almost smiled. "What happens to the supervisor?" she asked. "That is not part of your job. It became part of my job when I found him." Damian closed the folder. "You should go home. You should fire 3 people. I will handle it. Then I will go home." She turned toward the door. "Nora." She looked back. "Good work." Her expression softened by a fraction. "Try not to lose another $600,000 before morning." The door closed behind her. Damian sat alone for several minutes after she left. By sunrise, the warehouse supervisor had disappeared from the company. By the end of the week, Nora had been promoted. Their relationship grew inside late nights. At first, there were only files between them. Then food. Damian began ordering enough dinner for two without asking what she wanted. Nora complained about his choices and ate everything anyway. She began leaving coffee on his desk when meetings ran long. He started noticing when she rubbed the back of her neck after staring at screens for too many hours. One night they stood together on a loading platform at Port Newark while cranes moved containers beneath white industrial lights. The wind came off the water hard enough to pull at Nora's coat. She opened a ledger against the hood of a black sedan. "This driver made the same trip 3 times in 1 week," she said. "That is not unusual. It is when the truck never used fuel." Damian looked at the report. The mileage was copied. Yes, so the truck never left the yard, or it left without carrying what the paperwork says. Damian watched her turn the pages. "You trust numbers more than people," she said. "Numbers do not panic. Numbers lie constantly. Only when people teach them." She looked up at him. "That is why you hired me." A strand of hair blew across her face. Damian reached out and moved it behind her ear. The gesture lasted less than a second. Neither of them moved afterward. The port continued around them. Engines turned. Chains struck metal. Men shouted from one loading lane to another. Nora lowered her eyes to the ledger. "We should go inside." "Yes." Neither of them did. Their first kiss happened 3 weeks later in his office. It was after midnight. Rain struck the windows. Nora had discovered a routing error that would have sent a valuable shipment into a federal inspection zone. Damian corrected the order with 1 phone call. When he ended it, Nora stood beside his desk, exhausted and angry. "You knew the manifest was wrong yesterday." "I suspected. And you let me spend 12 hours proving it. I wanted to know whether you could." She stared at him. "You are impossible." "So I have been told, usually by people who are too frightened to say it twice. You do not appear frightened. That should worry you." It did. Damian rose from the chair. Nora did not step back. The space between them became smaller without either of them moving. When he kissed her, she caught the front of his shirt in one hand as if she needed something solid. He expected regret the moment it ended. Instead, Nora touched his cheek and kissed him again. For 3 months, they lived inside an arrangement neither one named. She still worked in the office. He still made decisions that affected hundreds of people. In public, they remained careful. In private, the rules softened. Nora left books on his nightstand. She placed sugar in his kitchen. She slept with one hand beneath her cheek and the other resting near his ribs. Damian learned that she hummed when she cooked and hated sleeping with the bedroom door open. She learned that he woke at the smallest sound and never allowed anyone to stand behind him. Once, just before dawn, she asked about the thin scar through his eyebrow. "A conversation at the docks," he said. "Did the other person survive?" "No." Nora looked at him for a long time. "You answer that too easily." "You asked." "I did." She did not leave. That frightened him more than if she had. When the Russo negotiations began, Ethan brought Damian a complete security assessment of everyone in his inner circle. Nora's file appeared near the top. They met in Damian's office after dark. Ethan placed the report on the desk. "She knows the account structure," he said. "She knows the warehouses, port schedules, union payments, and offshore companies. She designed part of the system. That is the problem. She is loyal. Loyalty does not make someone safe." Damian looked through the glass wall. Nora sat at her desk in the outer office reading a financial report. Her shoes had been abandoned beneath the chair. A pencil rested between her lips. Ethan followed his gaze. If someone wanted leverage against you, they would not take a warehouse. They would take her. Damian closed the report. No one knows. I know. You are not everyone. The Russos are investigating every person close to you. They will learn. Damian's voice hardened. She has done nothing wrong. I did not say she had. Then what are you suggesting? Ethan leaned closer. I am suggesting that you think about what happens when Frank Russo realizes the man he intends to trust with his daughter is sleeping with an employee who knows every weakness in his organization. Damian's jaw tightened. This is not about Frank. No, it is about you. Ethan tapped the report once. You hesitate when she is involved. Damian said nothing. Ethan continued. You have never hesitated before. Through the glass, Nora looked up. Her eyes met Damian's. She smiled. It was small and private. The kind of smile that assumed it would still be safe tomorrow. Damian looked away first. 2 days later, Nora stood in a pharmacy restroom holding a pregnancy test. She read the result 3 times. Positive. For several minutes, she sat on the closed toilet seat and listened to the hum of fluorescent lights. Her first feeling was not fear. It was wonder. Something warm opened beneath her ribs. She pressed her palm against her stomach even though there was nothing to feel yet. Then she thought of Damian. She imagined his silence. She imagined the careful way his face would become unreadable whenever emotion moved too close. Still, she believed he would listen. That afternoon, she placed the test inside an envelope with a copy of her doctor's appointment. She carried it in her coat pocket for the rest of the day. At 7 that evening, Damian called her into his office. He stood facing the harbor. His hands were clasped behind his back. The Russo proposal rested on the desk beside him. Nora closed the door. You wanted to see me? Damian did not turn. Your position has been terminated. The words were so clean that she did not understand them at first. What your access will be removed tonight. Your final payment has already been deposited. Nora waited. Damian kept his eyes on the river. Did I make a mistake? No. Did I miss something? No. Then why are you firing me? This organization is changing. That is not an answer. It is the only one you are receiving. Nora felt the envelope inside her pocket. The edge pressed against her fingers. She took 1 step closer. Look at me. Damian's shoulders became rigid. Nora. Look at me and say it. He knew he should turn. He also knew that if he saw her face, the decision might collapse. Ethan's warning remained inside his mind. You hesitate when she is involved. Damian stared at the harbor. This is not a discussion. The silence behind him changed. Nora looked at the Russo documents. Vivian's name appeared at the top of the first page. Understanding reached her in the most painful possible form. You chose the deal. Damian said nothing. I thought I mattered more than a contract. Every instinct in him demanded that he turn around. Instead, he forced his voice to remain cold. You misunderstood your position. Nora stopped breathing for a second. The envelope in her hand crumpled. Damian heard the paper. He nearly looked. Then the office door opened. Nora walked out without another word. Ethan stood near the elevators. He watched her cross the lobby. Her face was pale, but her steps remained steady. When the elevator arrived, she entered and pressed the button. As the doors began to close, she looked once toward Damian's office. He was still facing the harbor. The doors met between them. In the elevator, Nora pulled out her phone. She called Damian. The call did not connect. She tried again from the lobby, then from the sidewalk, then from the back seat of a taxi. By midnight, Ethan had instructed the communications staff to block her number from every line connected to the organization. Over the following 3 weeks, Nora left 11 calls and 3 voice messages. Damian received none of them. She applied for work at shipping firms in Newark, Elizabeth, Bayonne, and Brooklyn. Each interview ended the same way. The hiring manager would read her employment history, excuse himself, and return with a different expression. Damian Cole did not dismiss people without cause. Some assumed she had stolen from him. Others believed she had spoken to federal investigators. No one wanted to risk hiring a woman Damian had removed from his organization. Her savings began to disappear. Rent came due. Medical appointments became more frequent. She sold jewelry, then furniture, then the car she had bought after her promotion. At night, she lay awake in a nearly empty apartment with one hand on her stomach and listened to traffic moving below the window. She told herself she would find another way. She always found another way. Then Gideon Rourke called. His office occupied the top floor of an old warehouse near Elizabeth. The building smelled of oil dust and cold iron. Rourke stood when Nora entered. He was tall and narrow, dressed in a dark suit without a tie. His smile appeared friendly until she noticed that his eyes did not change with it. "I know who you are," he said. "That makes one of us." He laughed. "You worked for Damian Cole. I worked in finance. You knew where the bodies were buried. I knew where the invoices were filed." Rourke gestured toward the chair across from him. "I need someone who understands shipping accounts." "Why me?" "Because everyone else is afraid to hire you." Nora remained standing. "And you are not. I am afraid of many things. Damian Cole is not one of them." She should have left then. Something in the room warned her. Maybe it was the locked cabinet behind his desk. Maybe it was the man standing outside the door. Maybe it was the way Rourke looked at her stomach before returning his attention to her face. But her bank account held enough money for 12 more days. The doctor wanted payment before the next appointment. Nora sat down. For the first 6 weeks, Rourke behaved like a reasonable employer. He gave her shipping records, payment schedules, and access to warehouse accounts. He paid on time. He offered a car service when her pregnancy became visible. Then, one afternoon, he entered her office while she was reviewing manifests. His gaze settled on her stomach. "How far along are you?" Nora closed the file. "That is personal." Rourke smiled. "Everything becomes personal eventually." The following day, her phone disappeared from her desk. By evening, he had found the blocked calls to Damian. He found the appointment date. He counted backward. When Nora tried to leave, the warehouse doors did not open. Rourke stood behind her in the hallway. His voice was almost gentle. "You should have told me who the father was." Nora turned. "It has nothing to do with you." He stepped closer. "That depends on what he is willing to give me." His hand rose toward her throat. Nora backed into the locked door. Rourke's fingers closed around her neck with slow, deliberate pressure. "Damian Cole threw you away," he whispered. "But he may still pay to keep what belongs to him." 8 months later, in the bright noise of Newark Airport, Nora stood in front of Damian with those fingerprints still visible beneath her collar. And for the first time, Damian understood that the choice he had made in silence had followed her into every locked room. That understanding came too late to erase the bruises around Nora's throat, but not too late to make Damian move. The man near the coffee shop lowered his phone and started toward them. A second man appeared beside the information desk. They did not look at Nora directly. Professionals rarely did. Their eyes moved across reflections in the glass, polished metal, and dark television screens mounted above the terminal. Damian recognized the pattern. They were closing the exits before approaching her. Nora's fingers tightened around his sleeve. "Do not look at them." "I already did." "Then they know you saw them." Damian turned his body slightly, placing himself between Nora and the nearest man. "How many? I saw 3 when I entered the terminal. Where is the third? I lost him near the ticket counters." Damian scanned the crowd without moving his head. Families stood beside towers of luggage. A child cried near a row of charging stations. An airline employee called for passengers on a delayed flight to London. The ordinary noise made the danger feel more precise. Nora shifted her weight and nearly collapsed. Damian caught her beneath the arm. Pain crossed her face before she hit it. "Can you run?" She looked down at her injured ankle. "Not unless you want your daughter delivered beside a vending machine." The word struck him harder than the sight of her stomach had. His daughter. The confirmation was buried inside the warning spoken without ceremony because there was no time for one. Damian took off his coat and placed it around her shoulders. The dark fabric covered her oversized coat and hid most of her face. "Stay close. I have been trying to stay invisible for 2 days. You are not invisible anymore. That is what frightens me." The nearest man reached inside his jacket. Damian pressed 2 fingers to the communication device inside his ear. "Caleb," Static answered. Then Caleb Price's voice came through. "I am on the service road. East employee exit. Now. That door is restricted. Not anymore." Damian guided Nora toward a narrow corridor beside a closed restaurant. A red sign warned that only airport personnel were permitted beyond the doors. An employee pushing a cart stepped into their path. "Sir, you cannot go through there." Damian did not slow down. The employee saw his face, saw the security men moving behind him, and pulled the cart aside. They passed through the door. The terminal noise vanished behind heavy steel. The service corridor smelled of cleaning fluid and hot machinery. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Pipes ran along the ceiling in long silver rows. Nora's breathing became shallow. Damian adjusted his pace to match hers. "Where did you get the ticket I bought it yesterday?" "With what money? I kept some cash hidden." "Where were you going, Dublin?" "Why Dublin?" "Because it was the first international flight I could afford that left before noon. You had no one waiting there." "No. No place to stay." "No." Damian looked at her. She kept her eyes on the corridor ahead. "You were going to cross an ocean with no plan. My plan was to be somewhere Gideon did not own the doors." Footsteps struck the floor behind them, fast. Nora looked over her shoulder. One of the men entered the corridor. He pulled a pistol from beneath his jacket. Damian pushed Nora behind a metal luggage cart as the first shot struck the wall. The sound exploded inside the narrow space. Damian drew his weapon. Airport workers screamed farther down the corridor. The gunman fired again. Damian moved around the cart and crossed the distance before the man could adjust his aim. He caught the gunman's wrist, drove it into the wall, and struck him beneath the ribs. The pistol fell. Damian forced the man's face against the concrete. "Who sent you?" The man laughed once through clenched teeth. "You know who." Damian twisted his arm higher. "Say his name." A second shot came through the door behind them. The bullet struck the luggage cart. Nora dropped to the floor, covering her stomach with both arms. Damian fired toward the doorway. The second man disappeared from view. Caleb came through a side entrance with his weapon raised. He wore a black jacket over a shoulder holster, and his expression remained as calm as if he had entered a quiet garage. "Car is outside." Damian struck the first gunman behind the ear and let him fall. Caleb moved toward Nora. She flinched when he reached for her. Damian stepped between them. "She stays with me." Caleb nodded once. No question. No hesitation. They moved through the service exit into the rain. A black armored SUV waited beside the curb with the rear door open. Nora stopped at the step. Her ankle would not support the movement. Damian placed one arm behind her knees and another around her back. Her eyes widened. "Put me down. You cannot climb into the car. I can." You almost fell standing still. "Damian." He lifted her before she could continue. She weighed less than he expected. Far less. The realization moved through him like cold water. Nora held herself rigid in his arms, refusing to place her head against his shoulder. He carried her into the vehicle and lowered her carefully across the seat. Caleb entered the driver's side. Damian climbed in beside her. "Go." The SUV moved away from the airport as police vehicles approached from the opposite direction. Through the rain-streaked window, Damian saw a private aircraft parked near the restricted terminal. Vivian Russo stood at the bottom of the stairs beneath a black umbrella. 2 men waited behind her. She watched the SUV pass. Even at that distance, Damian could see that she understood he had made a choice. His phone began to ring. Ethan. Damian turned the device face down on the seat. Nora sat against the opposite door, as far from him as the vehicle allowed. Both hands rested over her stomach. Her fingers trembled. Caleb joined the highway and moved north. For several minutes, no one spoke. The rain filled the silence. Damian looked at Nora's throat. The marks were darker inside the car. He could see the shape of fingers beneath her collar. "Who is Gideon?" Nora stared through the window. "You know who he is. I know Gideon Rourke controls narcotics shipments through the northern freight corridor. I know he inherited most of his operation from his brother. I know he uses violence when better men use strategy." "Then you know enough." "No." She looked at him. The exhaustion in her face did not soften the anger. "You want details because details make you feel in control. I want the name of every person who touched you." And then what Damian said, nothing. Nora gave a tired, bitter laugh. "That is what I thought. You believe I came to the airport to hurt you. I believed you might." "Why?" Her eyes widened with disbelief. "Because you removed me from your life in less than 2 minutes and made sure no one in the city would touch me afterward. I did not tell anyone to refuse you work. You did not have to." Damian watched her. Nora turned back toward the glass. "Your name did it for you." The SUV passed warehouses and wet parking lots. Aircraft lights faded behind them. Nora spoke without looking at him. "After you fired me, I applied everywhere. Shipping companies, accounting firms, freight brokers, even legitimate companies that had no direct connection to you, and they refused. They were polite at first." She rubbed her thumb over the side of her hand. "Then someone would call them, or they would make a call. The next day, the position would disappear. Why did you not contact me? I did." The answer was immediate. Damian leaned forward. "When 11 times. I never received a call. I left messages. With whom? Your office. Your private line. The communications desk. I even called Ethan." The name settled between them. Damian's voice became quieter. "What did Ethan say?" "That you did not want to hear from me." Caleb's eyes lifted briefly toward the rearview mirror. Damian looked at the phone on the seat. Ethan had handled all external communication during the first weeks of the Russo negotiations. Damian remembered no messages, no missed calls, no mention of Nora. "What did you want to tell me?" Nora's hand moved over the curve of her stomach. He knew the answer before she gave it. "The baby." Damian stopped breathing. Nora looked at him directly. "I found out the day you fired me." The interior of the vehicle seemed to contract. "You knew that night?" "Yes. You were carrying the result. In my coat." Damian remembered the soft crush of paper behind him. He had heard it. He had chosen not to turn around. Nora continued. "I thought you had somehow learned about the pregnancy. I saw Vivian Russo's name on your desk. I thought you decided a child with me would interfere with the marriage." "I did not know." "You still chose not to look at me." Damian had no answer that could survive the truth. He lowered his gaze. Nora watched him for a moment. Then her expression hardened again. "Gideon was the only person who offered me work." "How did he approach you?" "He called after my 3rd month without a job. He knew my rent was late. He knew I had sold my car. He knew which doctor I was seeing. He had been watching you. I did not know that then." "What did he ask you to do? Shipping accounts? Warehouse payments?" At first, the work looked ordinary. Nothing connected to narcotics is ordinary. I needed money. Damian's jaw tightened. Nora saw it. "Do not make that face." "What face?" "The one that says I should have known better." "I was not thinking that." "You were." "I was thinking that you should never have needed his money. That is not the same as accepting responsibility." "No." She waited. Damian forced himself to continue. "It is not." Nora looked away. For the first 6 weeks, Gideon treated her with calculated kindness. He paid her on time. He sent a car to her apartment. He arranged meals at the warehouse. He spoke gently whenever he asked about the pregnancy. Then he began closing doors. First, he insisted that she work late. Then he took her phone, claiming there had been a security breach. When she demanded it back, he showed her the blocked calls to Damian. He asked who the father was. Nora said. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. He found out anyway. He accessed my medical account. How one of his people had a cousin who worked for the hospital system. They reset the password and opened everything." Damian's expression changed. Caleb noticed. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. Nora continued. "Gideon found the date of my first appointment. He counted the weeks. He knew before I understood what he intended to do with the information." "What happened when you tried to leave?" "He locked the warehouse." Her voice became flatter. Not calmer. Flatter. The way people spoke when emotion had become too expensive to carry. "He stood between me and the door. He said you had thrown me away, but you might still pay for the child." Damian looked at the bruises again. "He put his hands on you that day." "Yes." Nora's fingers rose toward her collar, then stopped. "He did it slowly the first time. He wanted me to understand that he could stop before I lost consciousness." Damian's right hand closed into a fist. He called it calibration. Caleb looked at him through the mirror. Damian did not move. Nora's voice remained even. He said fear worked best when the person understood exactly how much pain was still available. "How long did he keep you? 4 months. Where A compound in the Pine Barrens. You lived there? I was kept there." The correction was quiet. Damian accepted it. "Did he hurt the baby?" "He kicked me once." Damian turned toward her fully. "Where?" "In the ribs. Why I refused to give him a password." "What password? Yours?" The answer carried more than one meaning. Damian understood both. Nora pressed her hand against her side as if the memory itself still hurt. "He was careful not to hit my stomach. He called the baby an asset." The word made something violent pass across Damian's face. Nora saw it and looked away. "Do not promise to kill him. I have not promised anything. You do not need words." "What do you want me to say?" "That you understand killing him will not erase what happened." Damian's voice dropped. "I understand." Nora studied him. For the first time since the airport, she seemed uncertain what to do with his answer. The SUV turned onto the New Jersey Turnpike. Traffic thickened around them. Damian picked up his phone. Ethan had called 9 times. Vivian had called twice. Frank Russo's office had called once. He ignored all of them. Nora shifted in her seat and winced. Damian saw it. "Are you having contractions?" "No." "You are in pain. My back hurts. How often?" "It hurts because I have been walking for 2 days." "You escaped 2 days ago." Nora nodded. "How Gideon went to Rotterdam for a meeting. Most of his men stayed at the compound, but the night rotation changed." "You waited for that." "I waited for 4 months." "What did you take my passport?" "Cash. The clothes I could carry, and the bag." Her eyes moved toward the faded canvas bag on the floor. And the bag. Damian looked at it. The zipper had been repaired with black electrical tape. One strap was nearly torn through. "You risked your life for that bag." "No." Nora's gaze sharpened. I risked my life for what is inside it. The phone rang again. "Ethan," Damian answered. "Where are you?" Ethan asked. His voice was controlled, but the control sounded thinner than usual. "Driving. Vivian has been standing on the tarmac for 30 minutes. Frank called me directly. He considers this a deliberate insult." Damian looked at Nora. Her eyes were closed, but he knew she was listening. "Did you know she was pregnant?" Silence. It lasted less than a second. Too short for most people to notice. Damian noticed. "Who? Nora." "I knew nothing about her life after she left." "Did she call you Ethan?" Paused again. "Not that I remember." Nora opened her eyes. Damian watched her. Ethan continued. "You need to return to the airport. Whatever problem Nora has, Marcus can handle it." "Why Marcus?" "Because you are needed elsewhere." "Was she needed elsewhere too?" "I do not understand the question." Damian's voice became cold enough to change the air inside the vehicle. "Did you tell every company in Newark not to hire her?" "No." "Did you block her calls?" "Damian, this is not the time." That was not an answer. Ethan exhaled. "You were entering the most important negotiation of your life." She was emotional. "I protected your focus." Nora's face lost what little color remained. Damian looked down at the phone. "You heard her messages?" "I heard enough. She was trying to tell me she was carrying my child." Ethan said nothing. The silence confirmed more than an admission would have. Damian's voice remained calm. "What did you do with the messages? I deleted them." Caleb's eyes met Damian's in the mirror. Nora turned toward the window. Her hand covered her mouth. Damian looked at her reflection in the glass. Why Ethan's answer came carefully. Because the Russo agreement required stability. Nora was already becoming a complication. She was pregnant. She was a financial employee with access to sensitive information and an emotional attachment to you. She was carrying my daughter. The word left Damian before he intended to speak it. Nora closed her eyes. Ethan's voice hardened. "You did not know it was a daughter." "I know now." "Then you also know the timing is disastrous. Vivian is here. The dinner is in 2 days. Frank Russo has committed millions to the agreement." Damian's gaze settled on Nora's bruised throat. "Did you know Gideon hired her?" A longer silence followed. Ethan recovered too slowly. "I heard she had found work. With him. I do not monitor every employee after dismissal." "No." Damian's voice became almost gentle. "You only monitor the ones whose calls you delete." "Damian, listen to me. Where are you?" "At the airport. Stay there." "Are you coming back?" "No." "Then where are you going?" Damian ended the call. Nora turned toward him. "He knows. Not everything. He knows enough to run. He will not run yet. You sound certain. He believes he can still convince me that what he did was necessary." "Can he?" Damian met her eyes. "No." The answer was immediate. Nora looked down at the bag. "There is more." Damian waited. She took a breath. "When Gideon hired me, he gave me access to a set of shipping accounts. He said they belonged to companies moving narcotics through Pennsylvania and New York. They did not." "No." She bent slowly and reached for the bag. Pain tightened her face. Damian lifted it for her and placed it on the seat between them. Nora did not thank him. She held the bag against her stomach. "After 3 weeks, I found a routing pattern I recognized." "Which one?" "The numbers attached to the Newark fuel contracts." Damian's eyes narrowed. "Those accounts are internal." "I know." She pulled at the electrical tape across the zipper. "The ledgers Gideon gave me were copies of your books, not summaries." "Mirrors." Damian sat perfectly still. Nora continued. "They contained your shell company's port maintenance schedules, union payments, storage leases, and private security rotations." "How much?" "Everything." Caleb's eyes moved toward the mirror again. Damian's face showed nothing. That absence of expression was the sign Caleb understood best. Nora placed the bag across her lap. At first I thought Gideon had hacked the system. Then I found recurring payments moving through a freight company registered in Delaware, to whom the name was hidden behind 3 companies. But you found it. Yes. Damian waited. Nora looked at him. Ethan. The name entered the vehicle like a bullet. Caleb stopped looking in the mirror. Damian's voice remained level. How much? $60,000 a month. For how long? 7 months. That meant the betrayal had begun before Nora entered Gideon's organization, before the engagement was finalized, possibly before Damian fired her. What did Ethan give him? Financial records, security schedules, copies of the Russo documents. Damian leaned forward. What Russo documents? The merger drafts. He could have obtained summaries. He has the originals. Nora's voice sharpened. Frank Russo's handwritten notes are on them. Damian looked toward the passing traffic. The implications moved quickly. If Gideon possessed the Russo negotiations, he knew the routes, the money, the security structure, and the list of men who would be gathered in one room on Thursday night. Nora watched Damian understand. He is not planning to negotiate with you, she said. What is he planning to kill you? The rain thickened against the glass. Caleb reduced speed. Nora continued. There is a man inside the catering staff at the Mercer Hotel. Ethan provided the seating chart and the timing for the private elevator. The weapon enters with the food service, and after I am dead, Gideon takes the port routes. Ethan becomes the public face of your organization. The Russos are blamed for the security failure. A war begins. Yes, and they take control while everyone else is fighting. Yes. Damian looked at Nora's stomach. What happens to you? Her face changed. For the first time since she began speaking, the controlled distance disappeared. Fear entered her eyes without disguise. Gideon told me he would raise the baby. Damian's hand closed against his knee. He said your daughter would grow up calling him her father. He said taking your territory was business, but taking your child would make it victory. The leather seat creaked beneath Damian's fist. Nora watched him carefully. Do not lose control. He touched your throat. Yes, he kicked you. Yes, he planned to kill me and take my daughter. Yes. Damian looked at her. I am in control. The quiet certainty in his voice frightened Caleb more than shouting would have. The phone rang again. Ethan. Damian answered. I need you to turn around, Ethan said. Vivian is leaving the airport. Frank is preparing to withdraw. The engagement is suspended. Ethan went silent. The merger may be finished. The marriage is finished. You cannot make that decision in the back of a car. I just did. You are throwing away an empire. No. Damian looked at Nora. I am finding the part of it that was stolen. Ethan's breathing grew heavier. Who has been talking to you? Damian leaned back. How is the lighting in the parking garage on Frelinghuysen Avenue silence? Nora watched his face. Is the third level still dark near the freight elevator? Damian asked. Or did they repair it? 3 seconds passed, then 4. When Ethan answered, the smooth confidence had left his voice. I do not know what you are talking about. You meet Gideon's lieutenant there every Tuesday. That is a lie. You took $60,000 a month through a Delaware freight company. Damian, you sold the port schedules. You sold the accounts. You sold the Russo documents. Listen to me. You blocked Nora's calls because she was close to discovering your transfers. Ethan said nothing. Damian continued. You convinced me she was a liability. Then you made certain no one would hire her. That is not what happened. You pushed her toward the only man willing to take her. I did not tell her to work for Rourke. No, you only removed every other door. Nora stared at the bag in her lap. Damian's voice lowered. You have until sunrise to leave New Jersey. Damian, we can repair this. There is nothing left to repair. Frank Russo will destroy you. He will be more interested in learning why his private notes were sitting inside Gideon Rourke's compound. Ethan breathed once into the phone. You are making a mistake. I made the mistake 8 months ago. Damian ended the call. He lowered the window several inches and threw the phone into the rain. It struck the pavement behind them and vanished beneath traffic. Nora released a breath that shook on the way out. He will go to Gideon. I know. Then why warn him I want them together? Nora looked at him. For the first time she saw the shape of the man the city feared. Not the cold employer who had refused to turn around. Not the lover who had left sugar in his kitchen because she used it. The other man. The one who built systems around danger and waited for his enemies to step into them. You cannot walk into Gideon's compound without knowing the layout, she said. I will not. He has guards on the outer wall. How many? 4 between midnight and 4. Sometimes 6 if he expects trouble. We planned for 6. There are cameras on the east roof and motion sensors near the north fence. Damian looked at the bag. You brought a map. Nora pulled the zipper open. Inside were 2 sweaters, a bottle of water, a passport, and a small paper bag of crackers. She removed each item and placed it beside her. Then she ran her fingers along the inner seam. The stitching was uneven. She tore it open. A sealed plastic envelope slid into her hand. Inside were 2 flash drives and a folded sheet of paper covered in small, precise handwriting. Caleb looked at the envelope through the mirror. Nora held it toward Damian. 7 months of transactions. Every payment from Ethan, every company Gideon used, copies of the assassination plan, names of officials on his payroll. Damian took the envelope. The plastic was warm from her body, and the paper, a map of the compound. You memorized it. I had time. You carried this through the airport. I carried it for 2 days. Why not send it to someone to whom Damian had no answer? Nora looked toward the rain-covered window. I was not escaping to a person. I was escaping to distance. Damian unfolded the map. The lines were careful. Doors, windows, guard posts, cameras, stairwells, and power cables had been marked with exact notes. You built this while he kept you prisoner. I built it because he kept me prisoner. The SUV left the turnpike and began climbing north through wet residential streets. Trees pressed close to the road. The city lights faded behind them. Damian studied the map. Nora leaned back against the seat, exhausted. Her eyes closed, but her hand remained over her stomach. The gates of the Alpine estate appeared through the rain. They opened slowly. Damian held 7 months of evidence in one hand, and the map to Gideon Rourke's compound in the other. Nora had entered the airport with no safe destination, no ally, and no promise that she would survive the day. But she had carried the truth with her. Now the truth was inside Damian's car. The gates closed behind the SUV with the weight of a prison door. Nora opened her eyes. Beyond the rain-covered glass, dark pine trees lined the drive. Cameras followed the vehicle from stone pillars. Small lights glowed beneath the branches, illuminating wet gravel and the high wall surrounding the property. The house appeared slowly through the trees. It was built from gray stone and black timber 3 stories high with narrow windows facing the Hudson River. From a distance it looked less like a home than a structure designed to survive a siege. Damian folded the map and returned it to the plastic envelope. You live here. For the last 6 months. Nora looked at him. You moved. Yes. What happened to the penthouse security concerns? The answer came easily because it was not entirely false. After Nora left, the penthouse had changed. Nothing physical had moved. The furniture remained in place. The walls remained clean. The river continued to pass beneath the windows. But her absence occupied every room. Damian would enter the kitchen and remember sugar beside the coffee machine. He would sit at his desk and see her asleep on the leather sofa, a report open across her chest. He would wake before dawn and reach toward a cold side of the bed that had never belonged to anyone before her. He lasted 2 months. Then he bought the estate and left the penthouse furnished, as if he might return once the memories had exhausted themselves. They never did. Caleb stopped near the front steps. Damian opened the rear door before the security staff reached the vehicle. Cold rain blew beneath the stone portico. Nora placed one foot on the gravel and tried to stand. Her injured ankle folded. Damian caught her around the waist. She inhaled sharply and pressed one hand to his chest. "I can walk. You just proved otherwise. I have been walking for 2 days. That does not make it wise. It made it necessary." Her face had gone pale. Damian bent as if to lift her again. Nora gripped his sleeve. "No, you cannot put weight on that foot." I said no. The security men near the entrance looked away. Damian straightened. Nora drew a careful breath. "Do not carry me into your house like something you recovered." His expression changed. The request reached farther than the front steps. Damian stepped back and offered his hand. Nora stared at it. Rain tapped against the stone above them. "You can refuse," he said. She studied his face, then placed her fingers in his palm. Her skin was cold. Damian supported her as she climbed the steps, but he allowed her to set the pace. Each movement brought pain into her expression. She tried to hide it by lowering her head, yet Damian felt every tremor that passed through her hand. The front doors opened. Warm air moved over them. The entrance hall was lined with dark wood and pale stone. A fire burned in a wide hearth at the far end. The ceiling rose 2 stories above a black iron chandelier. Nothing about the room felt soft except the light. Nora stopped inside. Her eyes moved across the cameras near the corners, the guard standing beside the staircase and the keypad beside each interior door. This is not a home. Damian removed his wet jacket. No. What is it? A place people cannot enter without permission. Nora looked toward the closed doors behind them. I have heard that before. The words were quiet. Damian understood them. He turned to the nearest guard. Clear the east wing. No one enters without Miss Bennett's consent. Not security, not staff. No exceptions. The guard nodded. Nora looked at Damian. You think changing the lock changes what a room is? No. Then what does who controls the key? He removed a small electronic card from his pocket and held it out. Nora did not take it immediately. It opens the east wing, the garden entrance, and the sitting room downstairs, Damian said. It does not report when you use it. You expect me to believe that? No. Marcus can verify it in front of you. She accepted the card. It disappeared into the pocket of the oversized coat. Damian led her through the hall toward a sitting room at the back of the house. The room overlooked the river. Rain blurred the lights of the George Washington Bridge in the distance. A fire burned beneath a carved stone mantel. 2 leather chairs faced it, separated by a low table. Nora lowered herself into the chair nearest the heat. A sound escaped her before she could stop it. Pain, relief, exhaustion. Damian crouched near her injured foot. She pulled it back. Do not. I need to see the ankle. A doctor needs to see it. I agree. Then call one. I already did. Nora blinked. When? In the car. You were speaking to no one. Caleb sent the message. She looked toward the doorway where Caleb stood removing his wet coat. He nodded once. A civilian obstetrician is coming from Manhattan, Damian said. A trauma physician is coming with her. No organization doctors. No one who reports to you. They do not know who I am. Nora gave him a tired look. Everyone knows who you are. They know the name attached to the property. They do not know the business attached to the name. That distinction comforts you more than it comforts me." Damian stood. "When did you last eat?" Nora looked toward the fire. "Yesterday." "What?" "Crackers." "That is not food. It was available." Damian crossed to the doorway. A housekeeper had already appeared in the hall, a woman in her 60s named Helen Ward. She had worked for Damian since he first purchased the estate and had never asked why armed men stood outside the pantry. "Broth," Damian said. "Bread, fruit, water." Nora turned her head. "I am not one of your men." Damian looked back at her. "I did not say you were. You give orders like everyone in the room belongs to you." He held her gaze. "Please bring broth, bread, fruit, and water." Helen glanced between them. "Of course." She disappeared toward the kitchen. Nora rested her head against the chair. "You corrected yourself." "Yes." "That must have hurt. Less than your ankle." She almost smiled. The expression vanished before it fully formed. Damian sat in the opposite chair. For the first time since the airport, nothing demanded movement. No gunman approached, no phone rang, no doorway waited. The stillness exposed everything they had avoided inside the car. Nora pulled Damian's coat tighter around her shoulders. Her eyes remained on the fire. "Did you know I tried to call before Ethan admitted it?" "No." "Would you have answered yes?" "That was not my question." Damian waited. Nora turned toward him. "If the calls had reached you, would you have listened?" He could have lied. The old version of him would have chosen the answer that restored control. Instead, he looked at the flames. "I do not know." Nora's face did not change, but something inside it closed. Damian continued. "I want to say yes. I want to tell you that hearing your voice would have changed everything. But you cannot." "No." "Because you had already decided what I was worth." "Yes." The honesty hurt her. He could see it. It hurt him too, but pain was not payment. He knew that now. Helen returned carrying a wooden tray. Steam rose from a bowl of chicken broth. Beside it sat sliced bread apples, cheese, and a glass of water. She placed the tray on the table beside Nora. Nora stared at the food. Her hand moved toward the bread, then stopped. Damian turned his attention toward the window. He did not watch her eat. For a few seconds there was only the crack of the fire, then the quiet tear of bread. Nora ate quickly at first. Halfway through the bowl she slowed, her shoulders lowered by a fraction. Damian watched the rain instead of the reflection in the glass. When she finished, she set the spoon down carefully. I had forgotten what hot food tasted like. Damian's eyes closed for a moment. Nora saw it. "Do not make my hunger about your guilt." He opened his eyes. "I was not. You were. Then I will try not to." She leaned back. "Trying is not the same as changing." "No." The answer came without resistance. Nora studied him as if the absence of argument made him more difficult to understand. Marcus Dean entered carrying a laptop and a portable drive reader. He was broad-shouldered with close-cropped black hair and a scar along his jaw. He had led Damian's security for almost a decade and was one of the few men permitted to interrupt him. Marcus placed the equipment on the table. "Caleb told me what happened." His eyes moved to Nora's bruises. His expression hardened. Nora noticed. "I do not need pity." Marcus sat across from her. "Good. I am not good at it." He held out his hand toward the plastic envelope. "I need the drives." Nora kept them in her lap. "You need to tell me where they go first. Offline system. No connection to the house network. I make copies check for tracking software, then verify the records against our files. Who has access?" "Me." "Damian." "If he asks." Nora looked at Damian. He remained silent. She returned her attention to Marcus. No copies leave the room without my approval. Marcus glanced at Damian. Damian nodded. Her evidence, he said. Her rules. Marcus looked back at Nora. Then, no copies leave without your approval. She handed him the first drive. Marcus inserted it into the reader. A password request appeared. Nora leaned forward. Her face tightened as the movement pressed against her ribs. Damian noticed but did not reach for her. She typed a sequence of numbers and letters. Files filled the screen. Payment records, shipping manifests, private messages, photographs of handwritten notes, scans of corporate documents. Marcus opened a folder labeled Delaware Freight. Rows of transfers appeared. Each payment moved through several accounts before arriving at a consulting company controlled by Ethan Shaw. $60,000. Every month. Marcus sat back slowly. How long? 7 months, Nora said. That begins before your dismissal. Yes. Damian's gaze remained fixed on the screen. Nora pointed toward a column of dates. I first noticed irregular transfers before the Russo negotiations became official. The amounts were smaller then. Ethan increased them after I was gone. Marcus opened another folder. Internal port schedules appeared. Some bore timestamps from Damian's private server. These could only come from one of 4 people, Marcus said. Ethan was one, Damian replied. Marcus looked at him. And I was another. You did not sell them. You do not know that. I do. Marcus held his gaze for a moment. Then he looked away. The trust between them was old enough not to require explanation. Nora watched both men. How can you be certain? Damian answered. Marcus once refused $2 million to betray me. That only proves the first offer was too low. Marcus almost smiled. It was not the only offer. Nora looked at him again. Then why stay? Marcus's expression became serious. Because money cannot buy back the person you become after selling everyone who trusted you. The room fell quiet. Damian looked toward the fire. Nora looked at him. Marcus returned to the files. A folder marked Mercer Hotel contained the seating plan for the engagement dinner. Damian's name was circled. The service elevator schedule appeared beside it. A note beneath the page identified a catering employee named Paul Larkin. Marcus opened a photograph. Larkin stood beside one of Gideon's lieutenants in a parking lot. Find him, Damian said. Marcus reached for his phone. Nora stopped him. Not yet. Both men looked at her. If Larkin realizes you know he will disappear, follow him. Find who else he has contacted. Marcus looked toward Damian. Damian said nothing. He was waiting for Nora to continue. She noticed. He is not the only person inside the hotel, she said. The weapon enters through catering, but the service elevator still needs to be unlocked. Someone in hotel security is involved. Marcus nodded slowly. I will watch him. Do not arrest him. Marcus raised one eyebrow. We do not arrest people. You know what I mean. Yes. He made the call. While he spoke quietly near the windows, Nora removed the folded paper map from the envelope and spread it across the table. Damian sat beside her. Not close enough to touch. The map showed the compound in precise detail. This is the main house, Nora said. Gideon sleeps in the east corner room on the 2nd floor. His office is below it. How many entrances? 3 visible, 1 concealed. Damian looked at her. Where? Behind a filing wall in the office. It leads to a drainage tunnel beyond the north fence. Why did he show you? He did not. How did you find it? A utility bill listed a pump system that did not appear on the building plan. I followed the power use. Damian studied her face. You found a tunnel from an electric bill. I found a reason to look for one. She pointed toward the outer wall. 4 guards from midnight until 4. Gideon increased it to 6 after I tried to enter the office without permission. What happened? Nora's hand stopped over the map. He corrected the behavior. Damian's eyes moved toward her throat. She continued before he could speak. The west fence has old razor wire. The east side has motion sensors under the ground. The cameras on the roof overlap except here. Her finger touched a narrow space beside a generator building. A blind angle. For how long? 7 seconds during each camera rotation. Marcus ended his call and returned. We have Larkin under observation. Nora nodded. Marcus looked at the map. You memorized guard rotations while imprisoned. I memorized everything. Her voice carried no pride, only fact. Memory gave me somewhere to go when the doors stayed locked. Damian looked at the plastic envelope. You prepared for months. I prepared to survive the next hour. The fire cracked sharply. Nora flinched. Her hand rose toward her throat before she stopped it. Damian saw. Marcus saw too. Neither man reacted. Nora lowered her hand and continued. The second drive contains video. Marcus exchanged a look with Damian. What kind of video security footage from inside the compound? Gideon recorded every room except his own bedroom. He believed surveillance was a form of discipline. Are you in the footage? Damian asked. Nora looked at the screen. Yes. You do not have to show us. The recordings establish dates. They prove I was held there. We believe you. That is not the same as proof. Marcus inserted the second drive. Nora entered another password. Video files appeared. The first showed a corridor. The date in the corner was 4 months earlier. Nora entered from the left, carrying a stack of folders. A guard followed her. She stopped at a locked door and waited while he opened it. The next clip showed her sitting at a kitchen table while Gideon stood behind her. There was no sound. His hand rested on her shoulder. Even without audio, the threat was clear. The third file began with Nora pressed against a wall. Gideon's hand was around her throat. Damian stood so quickly that the chair struck the floor. The sound filled the room. Nora reached for the laptop and stopped the video. Damian turned away. His breathing remained controlled, but his hands did not. The knuckles had gone white. You asked for the evidence, Nora said. I did not ask to watch him touch you. It happened whether you watch it or not. Damian looked at her. I know. Do you? The question struck harder than accusation. Nora closed the laptop. You keep looking at the bruises as if they began at Gideon's fingers. Damian said nothing. They began in your office. Marcus lowered his eyes. Nora's voice trembled now, but she continued. He could hurt me because I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to go because every door closed after you closed yours. Damian stood beside the fallen chair. I know. No. You understand the sentence. That is not the same thing. What do you want from me? Her eyes filled with anger. I wanted you to turn around 8 months ago. The room became silent. Damian looked at her across the table. There were men in the city who believed he had no fear. They were wrong. Fear had stood behind him in that office wearing Nora's voice. He had been too afraid to face it. I fired you because Ethan called you a vulnerability, Damian said. Nora gave a short, wounded laugh. And that was enough. No. He set the chair upright but did not sit. It was enough because he named what I was already afraid of. What, that I would choose you. Nora's expression changed. Damian continued. I had built everything around the belief that no person could influence my decisions. Then you entered a room and I noticed whether you had eaten. I changed meetings because you were tired. I listened when you said no. You hated that. I feared it. So you punished me. Yes. The word landed without protection. Damian stepped closer to the table. I chose the Russo agreement because it asked nothing honest from me. It required a signature, a ceremony, and public loyalty. You required me to admit that someone mattered more than control. Nora's eyes glistened. You chose control. Yes, and I paid for it. Yes, my daughter paid for it. Damian's voice became quieter. Yes. Nora looked toward the window. Tears remained in her eyes but did not fall. I do not want your apology. You will hear it once. I said I do not want it. I am not giving it to make you forgive me. Then why? Because I refused to speak honestly when it could have protected you. Nora turned back. Damian held her gaze. I was wrong. I was cruel because cruelty made the decision easier to survive. I erased you from the organization and told myself it was strategy. It was cowardice. I abandoned you, and I created the conditions that placed you in Gideon's hands. His voice did not break. That made the words heavier. I cannot undo it. I cannot kill enough men to change it. I cannot give you a house and call the debt paid. Nora's lips parted slightly. Damian continued. You owe me nothing. Not forgiveness, not trust, not access to our daughter. Our daughter. Yes. She is not a claim you can enforce. I know. You do not get to decide where I live. I know. You do not get to decide whether I stay. I know. What happens when I choose something you do not like, I live with it. Nora stared at him. The old Damian would have corrected the question. He would have framed her options, controlled the room, and offered freedom only within boundaries he had chosen. The man standing before her did none of those things. That did not erase the old one, but it made him harder to dismiss. Marcus's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. Vivian Russo is at the outer gate. Damian's expression returned to stillness. Nora looked toward him. You expected her, no. Is she armed? Marcus checked the message. Her 2 guards are. Damian looked at Nora. You decide whether she enters this room. Nora's eyes narrowed. Why me? Because her engagement concerns you now. It concerned me 8 months ago. Yes. The answer removed the argument. Nora looked at the laptop, the map, and the evidence spread across the table. Let her in. 10 minutes later, Vivian Russo entered the sitting room. She wore a cream coat over a black dress. Rain had darkened the ends of her hair. 2 guards remained outside the door. Vivian stopped when she saw Nora. Her eyes moved to the pregnancy, the bandaged ankle, and the bruises around her throat. No shock appeared on her face. Only calculation. Then she looked at Damian. You left me on a runway. I did. My father wants to interpret that as an insult. It was not directed at him. That will not comfort him. Damian gestured toward the laptop. Sit. Vivian remained standing. I have spent the last hour deciding whether to cancel the agreement or have you killed. Nora looked at her. Which did you choose? Vivian's attention moved to Nora. You must be Nora Bennett. Yes. You are the reason Damian left. No. Nora's voice remained calm. I am the reason he discovered he needed to. Vivian looked at Damian again. Something close to respect entered her expression. She removed her coat and sat. Nora opened the folder containing the Russo documents. Vivian leaned toward the screen. Her composure changed when she saw the first page. My father wrote that note. We know Damian said. This draft never left Chicago. Ethan copied it, Nora said. Gideon Rourke has had it for months. Vivian read the seating plan, then the service elevator schedule, then the photograph of Paul Larkin. Her face grew colder with each image. The dinner was a trap. Yes, Nora said. My father would have been there. Yes. Vivian looked at Damian. So would I. Yes. She sat back. For several seconds, only the rain spoke. When Vivian finally answered, her voice had lost its anger. The marriage is finished. Damian nodded. My father may preserve the commercial agreement if the leak is contained. It will be. Vivian looked toward Nora. You collected this? Yes. While Rourke held you? Yes. Vivian's eyes moved to the bruises again. She did not offer sympathy. Instead, she asked, What do you need? Nora appeared surprised. Nothing from you. That was not a polite question. I know. Vivian considered her. My family has attorneys who can erase travel records, create protected accounts, and arrange medical care outside Damian's reach. Damian did not react. Nora noticed that too. I will take the name of an attorney, she said. Vivian removed a card from her purse and placed it on the table. The attorney reports to no one in my family once retained. Nora accepted it. Vivian stood. My father will receive a copy of the evidence. With Nora's permission, Damian said. Vivian looked between them. Nora nodded. Send only the Russo files. Marcus began preparing the copy. Vivian put on her coat. At the doorway, she paused beside Damian. We were never in love. No. Then do not apologize like a fiancé. I was not planning to. Good. Her eyes moved toward Nora. You may still lose the agreement. I know. You may lose the port. I know. Vivian studied him. You are different today. Damian looked at Nora. No. Today I stopped pretending I was not. Vivian left without another word. The room felt quieter after she was gone. Nora rested one hand beneath her stomach. Her face tightened. Damian noticed. That was pain. It passed. How long? 10 seconds. When was the last one? It was not a contraction. You do not know that. I know my own body. A low alarm sounded through the house. Marcus turned toward the wall panel. Every light went out. The fire became the only illumination. Red emergency lamps flickered to life along the floor. Marcus touched his earpiece. Outer cameras are down. Gunfire erupted beyond the windows. Nora flinched. Damian moved toward her. She raised one hand. I can stand. Another burst of gunfire struck near the front gate. Glass trembled in the window frames. Marcus drew his weapon. Vehicle at the south wall. At least 6 men. Rourke Damian asked. Has to be. Damian turned toward Nora. There is a secure room behind the library. No. It has independent air and communications. The evidence is here. Marcus can move it. The second drive is still connected. Another explosion rolled across the property. Orange light appeared beyond the trees. The outer gate was burning. Nora looked at the laptop. If they trace the drives, they may be trying to access the network. It is offline, Marcus said. The reader has a wireless recovery system. Marcus looked down. Nora was already typing. A warning message appeared on the screen. Remote access request. They found it, she said. Damian drew his pistol. Disconnect it. If I do, we lose the trace. What trace? Their signal. She typed another command. A map appeared, followed by a moving location marker near the southern wall. Nora looked toward Marcus. I can see where the connection originates. Marcus spoke into his radio and directed 2 security teams toward the position. Damian placed a handgun on the table beside Nora. Do you know how to use this? She picked it up, removed the magazine, checked the chamber, and returned the magazine with one clean motion. Gideon considered fear educational. Damian's face hardened. Nora placed the weapon beside the laptop. Go. You are coming to the secure room. I need 3 minutes. You have 1. Then stop talking. Gunfire moved closer. Damian remained beside her. Nora looked up. Your men need you. So do you. I need you to trust me. The words stopped him. Damian looked at the screen, then at Nora. What do you need? Keep the south corridor clear. Do not let anyone cut power to this room. I can lock their accounts while they are connected. Damian nodded. No argument. No command. He turned toward the doorway. Nora caught his wrist. His body went still beneath her hand. "If you go after Gideon angry, he will use it." Damian looked down at her fingers, then at the bruises on her throat. "I am always angry. No, usually you are cold." Her grip tightened. "Tonight, you are personal." Damian held her gaze. Tonight he made it personal. He walked into the red-lit corridor with Marcus beside him. Nora remained at the table, one hand resting near the weapon and the other moving across the keyboard. Outside, the outer gate burned beneath the rain. Inside, the fortress finally had someone worth defending. The first man reached the south corridor 30 seconds after Damian left the sitting room. He came through a broken window with rain on his coat and a suppressed pistol in both hands. Damian was waiting behind the stone archway. He caught the intruder's wrist, forced the weapon toward the floor, and drove his shoulder into the man's chest. The pistol discharged once. The bullet struck the slate between their feet. The man twisted hard, trying to break free. Damian struck him across the throat. The intruder fell against the wall, choking. Marcus stepped from the darkness and hit him behind the ear with the grip of his weapon. The man dropped. "Alive," Damian said. Marcus looked down at him. "For now." Gunfire continued near the southern wall. Damian's men answered from protected positions along the terrace. Red emergency lights painted the hallway in pulses, turning every doorway into a moving shadow. Inside the sitting room, Nora watched the remote signal move across the map on the laptop. The connection originated from a van parked beyond the trees. Someone inside it was trying to enter the drive reader through its recovery system. Nora allowed the connection to remain open. She gave it a false directory and watched the intruder move through folders that contained nothing except copied account numbers. Then she attached a tracking command to the session. A second location appeared on the screen. Not at the estate. Southwest. Moving. She leaned closer. The signal passed through 3 cellular towers before narrowing near an old highway leading into the Pine Barrens. Gideon was not controlling the attack from the van. He was somewhere else. Nora pressed the communication button beside the laptop. "Damian." His voice came through immediately. "I am here. The van is a relay. The primary connection is moving south. How far? Almost 90 miles. Rourke." "Yes." She enlarged the route. The moving signal followed the only road that reached the northern edge of Gideon's compound. "He is returning home," Ethan warned him. "Or Ethan is with him." A burst of gunfire sounded in the corridor. Nora's hand moved toward the pistol. Damian's voice remained steady. "Stay behind the table. I know how walls work. That table is reinforced." She looked at its thin wooden legs. "You need better furniture." Despite the gunfire, Marcus almost laughed from somewhere near Damian. Nora heard Damian moving. Then a man shouted. A body struck the floor. Damian returned to the channel. "Can you lock Rourke's accounts from there?" "Some of them." "Do it. If I freeze everything now, he will know we have the entire network. He already knows we have enough." "No. He knows I escaped with information. He does not know how much." Damian paused. "What do you need?" The question came without impatience. Nora looked again at the moving signal. "I need him frightened, not informed." "Explain." "Gideon has an emergency account. $6 million in cash reserves. It is separate from the rest of the operation." "You found it. I found the transaction pattern. I never found the physical banking keys. Where are they? In his records office, east side of the main house. And if the money appears threatened, he goes to the office." Damian understood. "You want him in one room." "With Ethan." A new warning appeared. The remote user inside the van had discovered the false directory. Nora smiled without humor. "They are beginning to understand." "What are they doing? Trying to erase the drive? Can they?" "No." "How certain are you?" "I wrote the security structure they are using." That answer silenced him. Nora opened a command window and entered the account number she had memorized 4 months earlier. She did not transfer the $6 million. She created the appearance of a federal seizure request. The account balance turned red. A notification was sent to the offline device stored inside Gideon's office. Nora watched the moving signal change speed. "He saw it," she said. "Where is he?" 20 minutes from the compound. The gunfire outside began to weaken. Marcus appeared in the sitting room with rain on his shoulders and blood across one sleeve. Nora looked at the blood. "Yours, no." He crossed to the window and checked the terrace. 4 down outside. 2 ran toward the tree line. "We have one alive." "Get him in here," Nora said. Marcus looked toward Damian, who had entered behind him. Damian nodded. A security guard dragged the captured attacker into the room. The man was young, perhaps 25. Blood ran from his mouth. His hands had been tied behind his back. Marcus forced him into a chair. Damian stood across from him. "Who gave the order?" The man looked at the floor. Damian removed his pistol and placed it on the table. The quiet action frightened the prisoner more than if Damian had pointed it at him. "Gideon Rourke sent you to my house," Damian said. "You entered through a window and fired at my people. You have already earned a grave." The man swallowed. "But you are still breathing," Damian continued. "That means you have something I might value." The prisoner looked toward Nora. His eyes stayed on the bruises around her throat. Recognition entered his face. Damian saw it. "You know her." The man said nothing. Nora leaned back in the chair. "What is his name, Lucas?" she said. "He worked the West Gate." Lucas looked at her. "You should not have run." Nora's expression became still. "You should have checked the bag." Lucas looked toward the torn canvas on the floor. For the first time, fear replaced defiance. Damian stepped closer. "Where is Ethan Shaw?" Lucas looked away. Damian picked up the pistol. "He reached the compound an hour ago," Lucas said. "Is Rourke there?" "Not yet. He is almost there," Nora said. Lucas looked at her again. She turned the laptop so he could see the moving signal. His face lost color. "You are inside his system." "I was inside it before I left." Damian looked at Lucas. "How many men are at the compound? 10. Outer wall, 6. Inside the house, 4. Maybe 5. Maybe people come and go." Marcus leaned closer. "Who is at the north gate?" Lucas hesitated. Marcus placed one hand on the back of his chair. The wood creaked. "Denton and Coley. Generator 2, men nearby. Tunnel." Lucas's eyes moved quickly. The movement answered the question. Damian saw it. "You know about the tunnel?" Lucas shook his head. Nora spoke from the table. "The entrance is behind the filing wall in the records office. Gideon thinks only 3 people know." Lucas looked at her in disbelief. "He was wrong," she said. Damian turned toward Marcus. "Secure the estate. Double the men around the east wing. No one enters without Nora's permission." Marcus nodded. Nora stood slowly. Pain tightened her face. Damian moved toward her but stopped before touching her. "What are you doing?" "Going with you." "No." Her eyes hardened. "You asked me to trust you. I do. Then do not leave me in a room while you use my map. You are 7 months pregnant. Your ankle is injured. You nearly collapsed on the steps. And I know every entrance inside that compound. You know it well enough to guide us from here. That connection can fail." Then we adjust. Nora took one careful step toward him. Gideon changes things when he feels threatened. He moves guards. He seals doors. He turns ordinary rooms into traps. "You are not going back there." The words came too quickly. Too close to a command. Nora's face changed. Damian recognized the mistake. He lowered his voice. "I am asking you to stay." "Why?" Because you survived leaving once, I will not make you return to that place. Her anger softened, but only slightly. You are not making me do anything. I know. Then ask me what I can do from here. Damian looked at the laptop. What can you do? I can enter the emergency account track. Gideon's phone monitor the cameras and lock sections of the compound if the old access points still work. Can you see the service tunnel? No camera inside it. The doors? Some. Marcus checked his weapon. That gives us more than we usually have. Nora looked at Damian. There is one condition. What Rourke's phone comes back here. Why it contains contacts not listed in the ledgers. Officials, distributors, police officers, judges. He kept the names separate because he trusted no one. Damian nodded. Anything else? Nora hesitated. The room grew quiet around them. Come back. The words were barely above a whisper. Damian's expression changed. Nora looked toward the laptop as if the request had belonged to someone else. Our daughter deserves the opportunity to decide whether she likes you. A shadow of a smile touched his mouth. I will try to make a respectable first impression. You already missed that. Marcus turned toward the door. We move now. Caleb brought the armored SUV to the front entrance. 2 additional vehicles waited beyond it. The rain had stopped, but the trees released water in heavy drops. Smoke rose from the damaged gate. Security teams moved through the darkness, collecting weapons and checking the outer wall. Damian paused beside the vehicle. Nora stood beneath the portico, wrapped in a wool blanket over the borrowed coat. The pistol remained in one hand, pointed toward the ground. He looked at it. Keep the safety on unless you intend to fire. I know. Marcus left 2 men outside the sitting room. I did not ask for them. They will remain in the corridor. Her eyes narrowed. Outside the locked door. Damian held her gaze. Outside the locked door. Nora accepted the correction. She held out a small communication device. Damian placed it inside his ear. Her fingers brushed his. Both of them became still. Then Nora withdrew her hand. Take the drainage ditch along the west side, she said. Do not use the main road. Damian entered the SUV. Caleb pulled away from the house. Nora remained beneath the stone entrance until the last vehicle disappeared through the damaged gate. Then she returned to the sitting room and locked the door. The convoy traveled south without headlights for the final 10 miles. Fog settled low between the trees of the Pine Barrens. The road narrowed until branches scraped both sides of the vehicles. There were no houses, no streetlights, no sound beyond engines and tires pressing through wet gravel. Damian sat in the front passenger seat. Marcus rode behind him with 3 men. Nora's voice entered the earpiece. Gideon reached the compound. Damian checked his watch. 2:37. Ethan. Still there. His car is parked beside the east building. Can you see either of them? Not yet. On Nora's screen, the compound's external cameras appeared one by one. Some showed empty walls. Others showed armed men moving between buildings. The image quality was poor, but the patterns were familiar. Nora watched a guard cross the main courtyard. 6 men outside, she said. 2 at the front gate, 2 near the generator, 1 at the west wall, 1 moving between the garage and the house. That leaves 4 inside, Marcus said. Possibly more. Damian looked through the windshield. The compound lights appeared faintly through the fog. Stop here. Caleb pulled beneath a stand of pine trees. The vehicles disappeared from the road. The men continued on foot. Cold mud closed around their boots as they crossed the drainage field. Nora watched their location through signals attached to the communication devices. Move farther west, she said. The ground sensors begin near the fallen oak. Damian saw the tree ahead. Its roots had torn from the earth, creating a black wall in the fog. He directed the team around it. They reached the drainage ditch. Water moved slowly between concrete walls. Marcus lowered himself first. The others followed. The ditch led beneath the outer fence. Nora watched one of the cameras rotate. Wait. Damian raised one fist. The team stopped. The camera turned east. Now. They moved. 7 seconds. Damian crossed the exposed ground in 5. The last man reached cover as the camera returned. No alarm sounded. They reached the generator building. 2 guards stood beneath a narrow awning, smoking and speaking quietly. Marcus moved toward the first. Caleb circled behind the second. 2 suppressed shots entered the fog. Both men fell before the cigarettes reached the mud. Nora watched the camera feeds. No movement inside. Damian looked at the generator cable. "Cut it." "Not yet," Nora said. Marcus stopped. "Why I need the cameras to record Ethan and Rourke in the same room." Damian checked the east side of the house. "How long Gideon is entering the records office now?" The camera inside the hallway showed him moving quickly. He wore a dark coat and carried a handgun. Ethan followed behind him. Ethan still wore the suit from the airport. His tie was gone. His face looked pale beneath the corridor lights. Nora opened the microphone connected to the room. Static filled her speakers. Then Gideon's voice. "What did she take? I told you, I do not know." "You told me she was frightened. She was. She crossed Newark Airport carrying evidence. She should not have reached Damian." Gideon entered the records office and locked the door. Nora watched him move toward the filing wall. He entered a code. A concealed panel opened. Inside sat a black case containing the emergency banking device and a second phone. "There," Nora whispered. Damian heard her. The phone. On the desk. Ethan paced behind Gideon. "You need to move the money and leave." Gideon turned. "You told me Cole would choose the Russo woman." "He should have." But he did not. Ethan's voice sharpened. Nora was never supposed to reach him. Gideon smiled. "You sound offended. I sound realistic. He knows about the payments." "How much?" "All of it." Gideon stopped smiling. Nora entered another command. The emergency account notification changed from pending to approved. $6 million appeared to vanish. An alarm sounded inside the records office. Gideon turned toward the banking device. "What did you do?" Ethan stepped back. "I did nothing." Gideon reached for him. Nora spoke into Damian's ear. "They are distracted." Damian looked toward Marcus. "Cut power." Marcus severed the cable. The compound went dark. Every camera turned black except the one inside the records office, which continued on battery. Emergency lights activated inside the house. Red, the same color that had filled Damian's estate. The team crossed the courtyard. Then the floodlights came on. White light tore through the fog. Gunfire erupted from the roof. A bullet struck the ground beside Damian. Another hit the man behind him. He fell hard. Marcus dragged him behind a stone planter. They expected the generator cut. Marcus shouted. Nora heard the gunfire. Her hands froze above the keyboard. "Damian, I am here." The west fence was changed. "Move toward the drainage channel beside the kitchen." "We are pinned. There is a service opening behind the fuel tank." Damian saw the tank 20 yards away. A guard fired from the upper window. Caleb returned fire. The window shattered. Damian crossed the open ground while bullets struck stone behind him. Marcus followed, supporting the injured man until 2 others pulled him into cover. They reached the fuel tank. Damian found the narrow concrete opening beneath it. "You remembered this?" he asked. "I spent 4 months looking at that wall." The service passage led beneath the kitchen. Damian entered first. The air smelled of damp soil and fuel. They moved through darkness until a steel hatch appeared overhead. Nora entered a code from the estate. The lock clicked. Damian pushed the hatch open. He entered an empty storage room. Marcus followed. The injured man remained outside with 2 guards. Damian moved through the kitchen toward the east corridor. A guard appeared at the far end. Damian fired once. The man fell behind a chair. Another rushed from a side room. Marcus struck him twice before he could raise his weapon. Nora watched through the battery camera. Ethan has a gun now. Rourke. Still near the desk. The phone is beside his right hand. Damian reached the records office door. Locked. Marcus placed a small charge beside the frame. Damian waited against the wall. The explosion broke the lock. He entered through smoke and splintered wood. Ethan stood behind an oak desk with a pistol aimed at Damian. Gideon stood near the open filing wall. His hand rested beside the second phone. "Drop it," Ethan said. Damian kept his weapon raised. Gideon looked at him and smiled. "Damian Cole," he said. "Dragged into the woods by an accountant." Damian's gaze moved briefly toward the phone. "She dragged you here." Gideon's smile thinned. Ethan tightened his grip. "Put the weapon down. You first. I have the angle." "You always believed angles were more important than people." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Do not turn this into something emotional." Damian looked at him. "You blocked her calls. I protected the organization. You sold the organization. I built it with you. You sold her first." Nora heard every word through the earpiece. She sat motionless before the laptop. Ethan laughed once. She was already asking questions. Damian's expression changed. "What questions the Delaware company? The early transfers?" She noticed irregular payments before the Russo negotiations began. Nora closed her eyes. Ethan continued. "She was too good. If she stayed, she would have found everything. So you called her a vulnerability. She was one. You convinced me to remove her. I gave you the reason you wanted." The truth struck with surgical precision. Damian said nothing. Ethan leaned forward. "You wanted her gone because she made you weak. I only made the decision useful." Nora opened her eyes. Her voice entered Damian's ear. "Keep him talking." Damian did not look away from Ethan. "What happened after I fired her?" Ethan smiled without warmth. "I made sure no one hired her. Rourke needed someone with access to your habits. She needed money. It solved two problems." Gideon laughed softly. Nora's breathing changed. Damian heard it. His weapon remained steady. "You sent her to him." "I opened a door," Ethan said. She walked through it. Damian's face became empty. That emptiness had ended men before. Gideon lifted the second phone. "Would you like to see what happened after she walked through?" He touched the screen. A photograph appeared. Nora asleep on a narrow bed with one hand covering her stomach. Another image showed her seated at a kitchen table beneath a camera. Another showed bruises along her ribs. Damian did not move. Gideon stepped closer. "She stopped asking for you after the first month." Nora stared at the image on her own screen. Her hand rose toward her throat. Gideon continued. "By the third month she stopped saying your name?" Damian's grip tightened. Rourke wanted anger. He wanted movement. He wanted the smallest loss of control. Nora understood. "Damian." Her voice reached him through the earpiece. He heard the tremor beneath it. "The phone is sinking." Gideon smiled. "I was going to teach your daughter to hate you before she learned your face." A progress bar appeared on Nora's laptop. 80%. Ethan shifted behind the desk. His weapon followed Damian's chest. Nora watched the number rise. 92. Gideon lowered his hand toward the back of his waistband. 98. "Done," Nora whispered. Damian fired. The bullet struck Gideon's shoulder. He spun into the desk. The phone fell but did not break. Ethan fired at the same moment. Marcus pulled Damian aside. The shot struck the wall. Caleb entered through the service door and fired at Ethan's hand. The pistol flew across the floor. Gideon reached beneath the desk. Nora saw the movement on the camera. Second weapon. Damian stepped forward and fired twice. Gideon collapsed beside the filing wall. His fingers stopped inches from the pistol taped beneath the desk. Damian crossed the room. He looked down at him. Gideon struggled to breathe. "She was mine," he said. Damian's voice was quiet. "She was never yours." He picked up the phone and placed it in his pocket. Behind him, Marcus forced Ethan to his knees. Blood ran across Ethan's wrist. His face had lost every trace of polish. "Damian," he said, "we can still control this." Damian turned. "There is nothing left to control. I know the accounts. The port officials, the Russo roots. Nora knows them better. She will leave you." The room became still. Ethan saw that he had reached the wound and pressed harder. "She may stay until the child is born. She may take your money. She may let you see the girl twice a month. But she will never forget what you did." Damian looked at him. "No." Ethan's eyes widened slightly. "She may never forgive me. Then why destroy everything?" Damian lowered his weapon. "Because doing the right thing only when I am rewarded is another transaction." Ethan stared at him. For the first time he seemed unable to recognize the man standing before him. Then his gaze dropped toward Caleb's sidearm on the floor. Nora saw it through the camera. "Damian." Ethan moved. Damian fired once. The bullet struck his chest. Ethan fell backward against the wall and slid to the floor. The room became silent except for the banking alarm. Nora looked at the screen. Ethan's body remained beneath the red emergency light. She did not feel satisfaction. Only the strange absence left when a door finally opened after years of believing it had no key. Damian removed the communication device from his ear. "Nora, I am here. I have the phone. Connect it to the field reader." Marcus removed a small device from his equipment case. Damian attached the phone. Nora entered the copied access key. Files opened across her screen. Names, payments, private messages, judges, police officers, customs agents, distributors, warehouse owners. Every hidden support beneath Gideon's organization appeared in rows. Nora copied the information to 3 secure locations. One file went to Vivian Russo. One went to Marcus's protected server. One went to an attorney whose office specialized in information that dangerous men needed preserved. Then Nora entered Gideon's central accounts. She locked each one. Warehouse payrolls stopped. Driver payments failed. Supplier transfers froze. Emergency funds disappeared behind passwords only Nora knew. Across New Jersey and Pennsylvania, men who worked for Gideon checked their phones and discovered they had not been paid. Fear changed direction. Marcus looked around the records office. This place will be at war by noon. Damian watched the locked accounts turn black on the field reader. No. He looked at Gideon's body. By noon, no one will have enough money left to fight for him. The team secured the compound. 2 guards surrendered near the garage. Another escaped into the trees. The wounded man from Damian's team remained alive and was placed inside the second vehicle. Marcus collected the banking devices. Caleb destroyed the remaining cameras. Damian stood alone in the records office for a moment. Photographs of Nora still glowed on Gideon's phone. He deleted none of them. They were evidence. They belonged to her story, not his anger. He placed the phone inside a sealed bag. Outside, the fog began to lift. The first gray light of morning entered between the pine trees. Damian returned to the SUV. His shirt was stained at the cuffs. Blood marked one sleeve. Mud covered his shoes. Caleb started the engine. They drove north in silence. At the Alpine estate, Nora remained beside the dying fire. The attack had ended. Security teams repaired the outer gate. The house was quiet again. She watched the convoy appear on the camera near the road. One vehicle, then another, then Damian's SUV. Her hand rested over the curve of her stomach. The baby moved once beneath her palm. Nora rose carefully, crossed the sitting room, and reached the door. For 4 months, every locked door had belonged to Gideon. This one belonged to her. Nora opened the door before Damian could knock. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He stood in the corridor with blood darkening his cuffs and ash along one side of his face. His shirt collar was open. His eyes looked older than they had when he left. Nora held the pistol at her side. Her grip remained steady. "Gideon," she asked. "Dead. Ethan, dead." She closed her eyes. Only for a second. Then she looked at him again. The phone, Damian removed a sealed evidence bag from inside his coat and placed it on the table. "Everything you asked for." Nora crossed the room slowly. She studied the device through the plastic. For 4 months, Gideon had carried that phone as if it were a second weapon. It held names, photographs, payments, and threats. It had been the center of the world he built around fear. Now it lay beside an empty soup bowl. Nora looked at Damian's hands. "Are you hurt?" "No." "That is not all your blood?" "No." She nodded once. There was no relief in the gesture, but there was no fear either. Damian closed the door behind him. "The doctors will arrive soon. You already said that. I am saying it again. You do that when you cannot control the answer." He looked at her. "You noticed. I always noticed." The words settled between them. Nora returned the pistol to the table and lowered herself into the chair near the fire. Damian remained standing. He wanted to cross the room. He wanted to kneel beside her, place one hand over the curve of her stomach, and feel proof that their daughter was still safe. He did none of those things. Instead, he sat in the chair across from her. The distance remained. Nora noticed that too. At 7:15, a black sedan entered the estate. Dr. Evelyn Mercer arrived with a trauma physician and a portable ultrasound machine. She was in her early 50s, calm, direct, and unimpressed by the armed guards surrounding the house. She examined Nora's throat first, then her ribs, then her ankle. Damian waited outside the sitting room. The door remained closed for nearly 40 minutes. He stood in the corridor without moving. Marcus passed once, carrying Gideon's phone toward the secure office. "You should change your shirt," he said. Damian did not answer. Marcus looked towards the closed door. "She is alive." "I know. Then breathe like it." Damian looked at him. Marcus walked away. A few minutes later, Dr. Mercer opened the door. "She asked for you." Damian entered. Nora lay on a narrow examination bed beside the windows. Her sweater had been raised above her stomach. Clear gel covered her skin. The ultrasound machine produced a low pulse of sound. Dr. Mercer moved the wand slowly. Then the room filled with a rapid heartbeat. Damian stopped near the doorway. The sound was fast, steady, and impossibly small. His daughter. Nora looked at him. For the first time since the airport, she did not look angry. She looked tired. "Come closer," she said. Damian took one step, then another. He stopped beside the bed. On the screen, the child moved inside a world of shadow and light. Dr. Mercer pointed toward the shape. "Her heartbeat is strong. Growth is slightly below average, but not dangerous yet." Yet Damian asked. Nora turned her head toward him. Dr. Mercer continued. "She is dehydrated and underweight. The stress on her body has been severe. There is also a risk of premature labor." Damian's face changed. "What does she need? Rest, proper nutrition, medical monitoring, no unnecessary stress." Nora looked at him. "That removes most of your personality." Dr. Mercer tried not to smile. Damian looked at the screen again. His daughter moved one arm. "Can she hear us?" he asked. "At this stage, yes." Nora's expression softened. "She kicks when people argue. She gets that from you." Nora raised one eyebrow. "You have known her for 30 seconds. I know her mother." The words came naturally. Nora looked away, but not before he saw the small shift in her face. After the examination, Dr. Mercer wrapped Nora's ankle and gave her instructions for the next several days. When she left, Damian stood near the windows while Nora adjusted the blanket around her legs. "The East Wing is ready," he said. "I heard. 3 bedrooms, a private bathroom, separate access to the garden. You already decided where I would stay." Damian turned toward her. "I prepared an option. Those words are very close to each other. You can refuse and go where—" He said nothing. Nora watched him. "That is the problem, Damian. A choice is not freedom when one option is a locked room and the other is the street. You will not be sent into the street. Because you say so. Yes. You still believe your promise should be enough. No." The answer came quietly. "I believe I have to make it true long enough for you to decide whether it means anything." Nora studied him. Then she looked toward the hallway. "I will stay in the East Wing." Damian did not move. Temporarily, she added, "I understand. I control my medical care. Yes. No guard enters without permission. Yes. No one reports my movements to you. Yes. I choose who sees the baby after she is born. Yes." Nora's eyes narrowed. "You agreed too quickly. They are reasonable conditions. You once fired me because I made you uncomfortable. I was a coward." She held his gaze. "No, you were the same man making a cowardly decision." Damian accepted the correction. "You are right." Nora looked away first. At 8 that morning, Vivian Russo called. Damian answered from the secure office with Nora seated nearby. Frank Russo appeared beside his daughter on the screen. His face was heavy with anger and lack of sleep. "You left my daughter on a runway," he said. "I did." "You canceled an agreement worth millions. I canceled a marriage." Frank looked toward Nora. "And the rest depends on what your family chooses to do with the evidence." Vivian placed a document on the table. "We verified the handwriting, the hotel access, and the catering contact. Ethan sold information that could have killed both families." Frank's anger shifted. "Not gone, redirected. The commercial agreement survives," he said. "Under review. No marriage clause," Vivian added. "Agreed," Damian said. Frank looked toward Nora. She collected the files. "Yes," Nora answered for herself. "I collected them." Frank leaned back. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you. Everyone wants something. I want the records released to the people who can verify what happened." Damian looked at her. Nora continued. "My name was destroyed because no one questioned Damian's decision. I do not want it restored because people are afraid of him. I want proof." Frank looked toward Damian. "That proof exposes part of your network." "I know," Damian said. "And you agree?" Damian looked at Nora. "She decides which records are released." For several seconds, no one spoke. Vivian's expression changed first. She understood what the answer cost him. "We will provide legal support," she said. "Independent counsel. No obligations." Nora nodded. "I will take the attorney." The call ended 20 minutes later. By noon, copies of selected records had reached 3 law firms, 2 financial investigators, and several companies that once refused to employ Nora. The first call came before 1. A shipping firm in Bayonne offered her a senior position. The second call offered more money. The third included an apology from a man who had refused to look her in the eye 8 months earlier. Nora turned off the phone. Damian stood beside the fireplace. "You do not want the offers. I want the choice. You have it. Because I forced you to give it back." "Yes." She looked at him. Again, there was no defense. That absence did not heal anything. But it left room where control had once stood. The following weeks passed slowly. Nora moved into the East Wing. Damian never entered without knocking. At first, she did not answer. He left food outside the door and walked away. Later, she allowed him to attend one medical appointment, then another. He sat in waiting rooms beside people who had no idea who he was. He did not demand private entrances. He did not remove anyone from a chair. He waited when the nurse said to wait. At night, Nora sometimes woke with her hands around her own throat. The first time Damian heard her crying, he stopped outside the bedroom door. He did not enter. Nora. Silence. I am outside. Her breathing came through the wood. Do not come in. I will not. He sat on the floor beside the door. An hour later, her voice came again. Are you still there? Yes. You can leave. Yes. He remained. The door opened a few inches. Nora looked down at him. You never listen. I listened. You stayed. You did not ask me to go. I said you could. That is not the same thing. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she left the door open and returned to bed. Damian stayed on the floor until dawn. 3 weeks later, Nora found him in the kitchen attempting to cook breakfast. Smoke rose from a pan. Bread had burned inside the toaster. Coffee spread across the counter. She leaned against the doorway, one hand resting on her stomach. You control 12 shipping terminals. Damian looked at the pan. The pan does not respect authority. A laugh escaped her. Small, unprepared, real. Damian became still. Nora crossed the room and took the spatula from his hand. Their fingers touched. Neither moved away immediately. I want you to stay, Damian said. Nora's shoulders tightened. He continued before she could answer. Not because of the baby. Not because I need your work. Not because I believe killing Gideon repaired what I did. Then why? Because every honest version of my life includes you. Nora looked down at the pan. You do not get to decide the ending. I know. You may spend years earning back what you destroyed. I know, and I may still leave. Damian's voice remained steady. I know. Nora placed the spatula back into his hand. Start with breakfast. He looked at the burned bread. That seems unfair. It is the easiest thing I will ask of you. And after breakfast, she met his eyes. After breakfast, you can ask me again.